we got plenty of time to dive headfirst into all the Eagles' moves and discuss them. But before I do, I want to get in a little bit. I want to get loose on the rest of the NFC East, because I don't understand, too much of my glee, I don't understand what the other teams in the NFC East are doing in free agency. I'm trying to understand it. I'm trying to put myself in their shoes. But for the life of me, some of the moves that they're making, quite frankly, just leaving me scratching my head. I mean, let's take the New York Giants, for example. Let's go up the turnpike to our rivals up there at MetLife Stadium. Now, I'll be honest, for a second there, for a millisecond, for a fraction of a moment, I thought that maybe the New York Giants were doing the right thing. I know that Gettleman looks like the type of guy who licks windows as a hobby, but maybe he might be smarter than he looks. Maybe the Giants are trying to TTP their way into next year's quarterback class. Maybe the New York Giants are trying to create their own process to rebuild this team by tanking. I mean, sure, they picked up Eli Manning's $5 million option for 2019, who, by the way, at the age of 38, makes him the third highest paid quarterback in 2019. But really, what were they supposed to do? It's not a strong quarterback draft class. The free agency crop, besides Nick Foles, absolutely sucks. So really, what were they supposed to do? I mean, Eli Manning won you 2 Super Bowls. Let him play out his contract and ride off into the sunset. I can almost understand that. And plus, if you draft a quarterback, he has Eli Manning as a mentor. Kind of makes sense to me. Trading Odell Beckham to the Cleveland Browns, a guy who they just signed to a 5-year extension in 2018 for $90 million with a $20 million signing bonus. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but hey, again, if you're going to TTP this thing, if you're going to purposefully tank to gain draft assets, why are you going to have a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. on the team? Especially if you're thinking about drafting a quarterback. You really want a rookie quarterback dealing with a guy like Odell Beckham Jr.? Odell Beckham Jr. would ruin a rookie quarterback right out of the gate. Plus, if you're able to move him along for some draft assets, there you go. You got a first. You got a third. You got a young, promising player in Jabril Peppers. Okay, I can almost sort of justify it. You let Landon Collins go all in the name of $11 million. You didn't tag him. You didn't even think about using him as a draft asset to move to maybe acquire another first-round pick. You didn't even do that. So that one leaves me scratching my head a little bit. And then you let your top pass rusher on the edge, you trade him to the Browns once again, but in exchange for an offensive guard. You're trying to fortify that offensive line. Now, granted, you made Nate Soldier the top paid left tackle in football last year, and you still blew. You still absolutely sucked. But I can almost understand where they're going with this. Maybe they're TTPing it. Maybe they're trusting the process. And then they signed Golden Tate, a 30-plus-year-old slot receiver when they already have a slot receiver. Clearly, for a second there, I thought for a second he might actually know what he's talking about. But no, the Giants are going to be horrendous. They're going to be horrendous for a while. And quite frankly, I'm thankful that Gettleman's in the position that he is running that team. Dallas Cowboys, what you been up to? Not a whole lot. Understandably so. You brought back a geriatric tight end in Jason Witten, who was so bad in the Monday Night Football broadcast booth, he made Booger McFarland seem somewhat palatable. That was your big free agent acquisition. Now, granted, you signed Randall Cobb to a 1-year deal. That was okay. But correct me if I'm wrong, but the Dallas Cowboys were in the top 10 of cap space going into free agency, and you get to spend none of it. No Earl Thomas. No Earl Thomas for you. Eagles fans, listen to me. This is why it's so important to draft character guys. You can tell me it doesn't matter what they do off the field. It doesn't matter how they behave. As long as they perform on the field, it's okay. All the woes of the free agency period for the Cowboys trickles down to one guy, and that's Randy Gregory. For once and again, he can't lay off the weed and gets himself suspended indefinitely for a 4th time after a conditional reinstatement last year. Now, all of a sudden, they got to go to Lawrence. They got to franchise tag him because they're the only viable pass rusher they have. by the way, might hold out because he's not happy about getting tagged for the second time in a row, and you can't spend any of the money that you have left over. Why? Because you have so many people with big contracts coming up. Guys like Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, and even Amari Cooper, who you already invested a first-round pick in getting, their contracts are up, baby. And look, I don't know if they can re-sign all of them, but if they do, you want to talk about being handcuffed as a team, salary cap-wise, so you can't build any components of the rest of your team. That's a problem, man. Jerry Jones already promised Dak Prescott that big money. What does that mean? You ain't going to give it to Zeke? That's a top two. That's arguably the best running back in the league right now. So what does that mean? You ain't going to give it to Amari, who you traded a first-round pick for? Bet you that first-round pick would come in handy right now with a historic defensive line draft on the brink. And then Redskins, listen, for the life of me, I can't understand what you're doing. For the life of me, I can't understand what you're doing. Imagine being a Redskins fan sitting in this seat right now, here today, knowing your season is already over. Because you've got Colt McCoy battling Case Keenum as your starting quarterback. Are you serious? That is a dumpster fire. And then listen, I don't know what you're trying to do with Landon Collins. I think the Giants letting Landon Collins go was a mistake, not franchise tagging him all in the name of $11 million. But that contract you signed, what are you trying to do? Resurrect the spirit of Sean Taylor? You think that's going to put butts in seats, giving him number 21 again? That's going to bring the people out to that dump that needs a new paint job called FedEx Field? I am so glad the rest of the NFC East is having the type of offseason they're having. Because I can look around at any one of those teams and say they have not gotten better. The Giants have gotten worse. The Redskins have gotten worse. And the Dallas Cowboys, by proxy of having to franchise Lawrence and then not being able to spend any money because they got all these contracts coming up, they haven't gotten any better. Meanwhile, we're sitting here in New Jersey with our Philadelphia Eagles bringing back Deshaun Jackson, bringing back a guy like Malik Johnson, a guy like Jason Peters, Jason Kelsey, even Lane Johnson restructuring so that this team can get better. As it stands right now, boys and girls, your Philadelphia Eagles are a better team than the last time we spoke. And everybody else in the NFC East is not.